All right, I would have my microphone for this one, but I've already packed it up and I can't find it. So we're gonna be dealing with iPhone audio for the next couple of videos. So I hope that's okay. Now these reviews always start with questions. So I'm gonna start with a question here as well. Anybody wanna play Smash Brothers? Well, I did, but I had a bit of a problem. I got my Gamecube set up and I found my controller, but it's a little worse for wear. I mean, just look at this stick. Look how much play that has. That's a big problem that the GameCube controllers had, was that these sticks were not the best of quality. Nintendo had a problem with a lot of their systems, actually. The sticks would be one of the first things to wear out on these controllers, and unless you have that thing dead center when the console starts up, your controller's not gonna work properly. The N64 had that problem, the GameCube had that problem, the Wii had that problem, even the Switch still has stick issues. The problem is, you can't just go to the store and buy these controllers anymore, or at least not the original first party ones. And good lord, if you hop on eBay and try and find a GameCube controller, you're gonna be spending a lot of money to get one of these original controllers. And God help you if you want the Wavebird. So I went down to the game store just to go see what new stuff they might have. They had hanging up on the wall these third-party GameCube controllers. So I took it down off the shelf and I looked at it for a minute, and then I asked the guy, well, what's the story on these GameCube controllers? Are they any good? He said that they're not as good as the original controllers, but they're pretty solid for what they are. And what they are is $15. 15 bucks is a lot cheaper than trying to get your hands on an original controller. So I thought, hey, why not? I'll give it a shot and see what I think of it. And so today, that's what we're gonna do together. We're gonna check out the Cirka GameCube controller. All right, here we go. Now, the first thing I noticed whenever I picked one of these up is that the Cirka controller is ever so slightly smaller than the OEM GameCube controller. It's not enough that it's going to really affect anything, but if you've handled one of these controllers a lot like I have, because this is actually the controller I got with my GameCube back in 2001, if you handle these controllers a lot, you will notice that this is ever so slightly smaller than the original GameCube controller, and it does feel ever so slightly lighter. That difference in weight, though, could come down to the fact that the Cirka controller feels like it's made of a cheaper, lighter plastic than the original GameCube controller was made from. But that makes sense given how cheap these things actually are. They got to do something to keep those price points low. So the guy at the store, whenever I asked him how it handles, he said he gave me the thing that everything feels a little bit stiffer. Now, after playing with it for a little bit, I can confirm that that does indeed feel true. The sticks feel a little bit harder to move. All the buttons feel like they have just a little bit more resistance than you would think they should. So whenever he said that, that checks out. To me, though, that's not necessarily a problem, because if the stick is just a little bit harder to move, you're going to be able to make those fine adjustments that you need to, that you wouldn't be able to do if the stick were looser. And me personally, I like that tactile feel, so the buttons giving just a bit more resistance is actually a good thing in my mind. But my saying that about liking the feel of this one might just be because I'm only just comparing it to my memory of how a GameCube controller is supposed to feel. When we talk about tactile buttons and how they feel, a lot of people are also curious how they sound, so I'm going to give you a feel of that right now. I'm going to let you hear the original GameCube controller, and then I'm going to let you hear the Cirka controller and let you make an audio comparison. Again, my microphone is not set up, so this is just the microphone of the iPhone that I'm using to record this video. One of the more interesting things to me about the GameCube controller was that it actually had full analog shoulder buttons. And the OEM controller, whenever you press the buttons down, there was a specific point where you could feel it bottom out, and then it would actually have a button click. That entire movement there, something was happening on the screen, but it had a definite button click whenever you bottomed it out. That is something that is sadly missing from this GameCube controller, from the Cirka controller. You still feel whenever you still have a point you can feel when it bottoms out, but it's definitely nowhere near as satisfying of a click. And there's also a definite point on the GameCube controller where you can feel it stop, and then you go a little further to get that click. that definite stopping point is still present here on the Cirka controller, but it's a lot less noticeable. And to me, that's a bit of an issue, but it's not enough that I would call this controller bad. Now let's compare the cables. Now again, the original GameCube controller, I've put through the ringer, so it's gonna definitely have a lot more wear to it than the Cirka controller does. Having said that though, you can see that the GameCube controller is a much thicker gauge of wire, which is good for these controllers because who tied their controller up, who tied their cables up properly? No, you wrapped the thing. You wrap the thing around it, and the thicker the gauge of wire, the less likely that is going to be to actually cause a problem. Because the more you wrap it like that, you're gonna bend it, and eventually that cable is gonna snap. I do feel I have to be a bit more gentle with the Cirka cable. Not enough that I think it's gonna ever be an issue, because I'm a lot more careful with my stuff now than I was when I was a kid. I would be a little more leery of giving this controller to a child because this cable does not feel like it's gonna be able to take as much torture as the original OEM controllers did. I mentioned before how the Cirka feels like it's made of a different plastic than the original controller does, and that holds true. The Cirka controller does feel a little bit more slippery in the hand than the original controller does, but again, that might just be down to the fact that this controller is new and this controller's had 20 plus years of use behind it. The original GameCube controller is a lot glossier of a plastic than the Cirka controller is, and that glossy controller does tend to give you a bit better of a grip whenever the oils on your skin get on it. But again, that glossiness on this controller might just be from years and years of use. The Cirka controller would definitely start to develop some level of that glossiness the more it gets used. As far as actual feel in the hand goes, I always loved the GameCube, so the GameCube controller just always felt right to me. This is feels like how a controller should feel. And the Cirka controller does deliver on that. Again, you can tell it's a cheaper build than the original GameCube controller is, but it still feels good in the hand. It fits the hands really, really well. And it doesn't feel like it doesn't feel like it's gonna just break in my hands like I would be worried these cheaper controllers would do. I can't speak for this long term as I've only had it for a couple of weeks, but it has played well for the games that I like to play with it. It's only time will tell if this will hold up as long as a real GameCube controller has. And since I can get a full set of these for less than one of these costs, not a bad deal in my book. But ultimately, no. This is definitely a downgrade from the original GameCube controller. If you can get your hands on an original controller for not too expensive, then definitely go that route, especially if you can get one that the stick doesn't wiggle and the buttons still feel good. This is definitely not something you want to take with you to try and compete in Evo, but for 15 bucks, you kind of can't beat this. This is a great controller to have around if you're wanting to play a few tracks of Double Dash, or if you and a few friends want to play a few rounds of Smash. Whether you pick it up or not, that's up to you, but I'm probably going to add a few more of these to my collection so that I can have a few GameCube controllers around that either A, aren't broken, or B, don't suck. But that's going to be it for me. Thank you guys so much for watching this video, and I look forward to seeing you in the next one. Have a good one, y'all.